military machine. And so if as an occupied people, they can have the ability and the power to fight U.S. imperialism from the outside, it is incumbent upon us, in the belly of the beast, here in the beating heart of world imperialism, to fight this government that continues to carry out wars in our name without our consent. And that is why we are here today. And we must also be clear about the fact that war and occupation has support from all sides of the political establishment. Surely you all remember that just weeks ago, this Congress passed a $738 billion defense bill. That's Republicans and Democrats. So the same Democrats that act like they're warring with Trump and warring with Republicans on any other series of issues, but yet empower him to exact death, destruction, and bloodshed on Iraq, on Iran, in the Middle East, and indeed all over this earth. This is why we cannot count on our elected officials to do the right thing and to really count for peace. You and I must carry through this struggle just like the people in Iraq are doing. And so that's why we must always be clear that the interests of empire are not the interest of you or me. Think about what we could do with $738 billion. This war, this campaign of never-ending war all across the globe that the United States is at the behest of, is taking food out of children's mouths. It's taking affordable housing. We know that that's especially relevant here in Washington, D.C., where affordable housing, truly affordable housing, is all but non-existent. And so we have to understand that just like this past Monday, we celebrated Martin Luther King Day, right? Martin Luther King, who called the United States the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. And when he was talking about the war in Vietnam, he said bombs dropped on Vietnam exploded home. And he talked about how much it cost to kill a so-called enemy combatant in Vietnam, opposed to what this government spends on education and on the poor here in this country. That dynamic remains the same. So we must be clear that a war in Iran, a war with Iraq, an occupation of Iraq, the occupation of the Middle Eastern region is indeed a war in each and every one of us. So it's not just a moral question, although certainly that's an aspect of it. It's a question of resources being stolen from you and I to carry out a war that nobody voted for. And so we're going to have a number of speakers come and talk to us today about this issue. We've got a group of students from George Washington University that's marching over here that will be joining us shortly. And now I'm going to pass the microphone to Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. Y'all give Medea a hand as she comes.
So thank you, Sean. I'm really glad that as I was coming here, I saw pictures from places around the world where they're already having protests. So to know that we are doing this together with folks from everywhere from France to Italy to Germany to Venezuela. I think we even had places in Africa that are doing protests. It's very exciting. But it's unfortunate, I think, that a lot of people think that the crisis is over because they're not hearing it in the news. And we have to be very clear that this crisis is not over because it's a manufactured crisis. And it's manufactured by Donald Trump. And so we know that he can use this crisis whenever he wants to distract from other things. And that's something that's going to be a real danger to us now and as we move closer to the election time. So we've got to use this as a moment to educate. I mean, it is amazing that we're not in the middle of a shooting war right now. Raise your hand if you thought after General Soleimani was killed that we were going to be in the midst of a real war. So we have a space right now and have to use that space well to do organizing. And I think that one of the things we have to organize and educate about is how for the people of Iran, there is a war going on. We might not feel it here, but they sure are feeling it there. And if you can raise your hand if you're here, if you have any ties to Iran, Iranian American, been to Iran. Wow. So thank you for being here, and we really want to hear today from the Iranian American community, because that is the community that best knows what's happening inside Iran. I've been to Iran a few times, and the last time I was there, I was really shocked at how much the sanctions are affecting ordinary people. And Americans hear sanctions and they think, oh, you know, that's against some top-level people and they're bad people, and so that's a good thing. They also think that sanctions are an alternative to war. Sanctions are not an alternative to war. Sanctions are a form of economic warfare. They're a silent war. And sanctions kill. And sanctions make it more likely that there will be a shooting war as well. So this is a time to really make people understand how dangerous the situation is with a reckless guy in the White House who only cares about himself, but how dangerous this situation has been with Iran for a long time now. And we're very glad, as I said, to have members of the Iranian American community with us here. And maybe we should start out, well, do we want to start with some music? Yes, how about some music? Woo, woo. Thank you so much for being with us, and could you
do we have a microphone stand or someone who'd be willing to hold this while I'm singing? Or maybe, I'm also happy to just sing. It's a small enough crowd. Okay. We're gonna plug in here, but while we're doing that, my name is Tay Phoenix. I'm a singer-songwriter from Seattle, Washington. I've been here in the Capitol since January 4th with the Swarm, the Senate folks. We've been raising hell over in the Senate office buildings and at the Capitol, trying to prevent this cover-up, right? Because a president that's willing to act with impunity to use our foreign policy for his own ends, whether that's, you know, trying to extort Ukraine or start a war with Iran, is a president that's got to go. Am I right? Yes. All right. Yeah. Well, November and before then, right? We've got some work to do. So I'm going to play a couple of songs here for you. We're just going to make sure we're sound checking appropriately. Please bear with us. Bear with us one moment. As you wish. I want to encourage you all to sing along with this if you know the words. Oh, great. Can everybody hear the guitar okay?
Oh, I'm already signed up. Yep.
Oh, how many roads must a man walk down before we can call him a man? People exist before we will let them free. And how many times can someone turn his head, pretending he just doesn't see? Oh, the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Yeah, the answer is blowing in the wind. How many years can a nation look up before we can see the sky? Oh, and how many years must one nation have before we can hear people cry? And how many deaths will it take to know that too many people
so much. Yeah, we might have some more music later. Gotta have that culture and art in the movement. Ain't that right? Yeah. How y'all feeling? Y'all want to do some chants? Yeah. No justice, no peace. U.S. side of the Middle East.
No justice, no peace. U.S. side of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. side of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. side of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. side of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. side of the Middle East. No justice, no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
No justice,
no peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice,
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
no justice.
No peace. U.S. out of the Middle East.
All right, make some noise.
Yay!
Once again, we want to thank you so much. We see people are continuing to come. We're already growing in numbers here today to say U.S. out of Iraq, U.S. hands off Iran, U.S. out of the Middle East, here to stand against war and against imperialism. Again, I'm Sean Blackman with the Answer Coalition, which means act now to stop war and end racism. And next on the microphone, we're going to have Brian Becker, National Director of the Answer Coalition. Please welcome him as he comes.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, everyone, for coming. We want to talk about what we're going to do today, and then we also want to talk what we're going to do in the coming days and in the coming weeks. On January 1st, a few of us talked together and decided that something needed to happen quickly, and we called that January 4th protest. And 2 days after we called it, Donald Trump ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani and senior Iraqi leaders. As they arrived at Baghdad airport for what they thought were going to be negotiations, Trump had actually talked to the Iraqi Prime Minister, invited Iran to come to Baghdad to discuss the possible de-escalation of tensions between Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Iran. And when Soleimani arrived and got to the airport, got in the car, as we all know, he was assassinated, and that triggered a major global crisis. Then Iran responded by striking 2 U.S. military bases far away from Iran, demonstrating that they had the capacity to strike American targets. But they did it in a way to minimize the loss of life. So no American soldiers were killed. They could have easily killed a great number of American soldiers, but Iran clearly was trying to give Donald Trump a way to stand down and at the same time not be able, or not to have to say that he was standing down. So he said instead, Iran is standing down. The net effect was that the world, which was poised on the brink of a major war, it stepped back from that major war, which if it had happened, would have been more like the Vietnam War than either the Iraq or Libya war. Meaning a major war. Iran is a country of 80 million people with a major military, and it would not have lost that war. And the Pentagon wisely stepped back. So now people feel there's not such a grave crisis as there was 3 weeks ago. That's probably why there's a slightly smaller crowd here today than there was on January 4th, even though more and more people are coming. What we're saying here today is that it would be a catastrophic mistake on the part of the anti-war movement or the progressive movement to say, oh, the danger of a major war has eased somewhat, and thus we no longer need to organize with the same intensity. That's not true. There was the danger of an imminent major war 2 weeks ago, and guess what? There still is. Because as we could see yesterday, when 1 million, or maybe it was 2 or 3 million Iraqis demonstrated and marched together and said that the U.S. must leave Iraq, they're not joking. They are going to keep organizing and mobilizing, and eventually they will do whatever it takes to drive American troops out of their country, and then Iran will be blamed for the next incident. Iran will be blamed. The U.S. media will say Iranian-backed militias in Iraq inflicted casualties on American troops, and thus Donald Trump must retaliate. Iranian-backed militias is a euphemism for Iraqis. Right. These are Iraqi people who don't want to live under occupation, who despise the occupiers and demand that they leave. That's why we're continuing to organize. Whether the demonstration is a little bit bigger or smaller today or 2 weeks ago, that doesn't matter. There is a major confrontation coming in the Middle East because the U.S. will not leave Iraq. In fact, Donald Trump said, if you make us leave, we're going to seize the oil revenue account that Iraq holds at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York.
Just like Venezuela.
Exactly. This is a colonial relationship between the United States and Iraq, just like they want to impose a colonial relationship on Venezuela, but the Venezuelans have resisted and they are not being defeated. And the Iraqis who were overcome are also not defeated. They're going to fight and fight and fight so that they can exercise their right to be free people. What do we do about that? We have to stand together as an anti-war movement and as an anti-imperialist movement with the people of Iraq, like the people of Venezuela, or the people of Palestine, or the people who are fighting for justice and freedom everywhere. That's why the Answer Coalition, Code Pink, and the other groups are going to continue to mobilize. Finally, in about an hour, we're going to march. We're going to march through Washington, but we're going to arrive at George Washington University. The students from George Washington University just arrived. I see you, Students Against Imperialism. All right? They reserved a hall, an auditorium. We're going to go to George Washington University, and we're going to meet there, and we're going to talk about what comes next for this new anti-war movement, which must grow and grow and grow. We have to take our task seriously. Finally, on March 19th will be the 17th anniversary of the U.S. invasion of Iraq. On March 19th and 20th and 21st, there will be another global day of mass protests in Iraq and all over the Middle East and in Africa and in Europe and in Asia and all over North and South America. That's going to be March 19th, 20th, and 21st, the 17th anniversary of the U.S. criminal invasion of Iraq. We demand, along with the Iraqi people, that the U.S. get the hell out of Iraq. We say get the hell out of Iraq. And like the people in the Middle East, we demand because sanctions are just another form of war. We have to stand together. U.S. out of Iraq, U.S. out of the Middle East, end all sanctions. Thank you very much. Trump says more war, we say no more. Trump says more war, we say no more. Trump says more war, we say no more. Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more. Trump says more war. We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war,
We say no more.
Trump says more war.
We say no